Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and today we're looking at a bunch of cards from the new expansion Battle Partners. This is an expansion, Japanese expansion coming out in this month, I believe, but internationally it'll be coming out along with rotation, which will be in around 2 months. So that's going to be exciting. Introducing trainers Pokemon, the four trainers so far in that set, which are, I believe, N, Hop, Lily, and Iono. And we'll be getting more trainers later on. Marnie has been confirmed, as we've seen Marnie's Grimmsnarl EX, and presumably getting Marnie's Morpeko, or I don't remember if it's an EX or not. And there's some other trainers that will be getting, I think, Ethan, um, some Rocket stuff, Team Rocket. We'll see exactly what that's like, but we'll see some stuff like that, and that's going to be exciting. But today we're looking at cards, which a lot of these aren't trainers Pokemon, but we have Lycanroc and Spike Energy. These are cards that go together. Nothing to really see here with a Rockruff, but Lycanroc says its ability Entangling Spikes. When you play this hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, so when you play it, you may attach up to 2 Spike Energies from your discard pile to this Pokemon, and its attack does for 3 colorless, so 2 Spike Energies plus another energy, probably a basic, could be another Spike Energy, could be, you could pay this with reversal, but it's bad, don't do that. But grabbing Fangs here for that cost, you do 40 and 40 more for each damage card on your opponent's active, and Spike Energy is a colorless energy that's just like Rocky Helmet. That is, if this Pokemon is attached and is the Pokemon this card is attached to is in the active and damaged by an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, even if it's knocked out, even if it's not. I always find it weird that they clarify when it's knocked out, but obviously you're probably knocked out. Regardless, you put 2 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon your opponent's active. So if you have 2 Spike Energies, they'll have 40 on them. Then you attack, you'll be doing 40 plus another 160, so that's going to be doing 240. That's really, really well. You'll be doing 200 plus they have 40, so a total of 240 will be on them, and that is decent. That's not bad. How amazing is that? It's decent. But if you add in either a third Spike Energy, because you will presumably be playing 4, so you'll have guaranteed 2, but potentially a third at some point, and then you could also instead have a Rocky Helmet, and if you have 3 things in any combination of those, obviously you can't have multiple Rocky Helmets, but if you have that, then you can use Spike Energy or the return damage to do 60 to them. Then you're going to be doing how much are you doing? You're going to be doing 240, so you're going to be 280 plus the 60, which is 340. Yep, and that is going to be one-shotting pretty much everything in the game, which is really good, obviously. So you can do that, and honestly, that might be. I mean, that's quite good, right? And one-shotting everything in the game on a single prizer. It is stage 1. You do need to find some energies early on and some energies throughout the course of the game, but it's a very strong card, or it's a very decent card. Is this great? I don't think it's going to be great. I actually already recorded a video, ended up scrapping it. It's now members only. If you are a Stage 1 YouTube member, which you can join, you can see that there's interesting analysis. Some of it's slightly different, but some of it's actually pretty different. But ultimately, some cards actually got announced in the middle of recording, which is kind of weird. And so I said, that's not what I wanted to do. But Lycanroc is a card that, and in that, I said it was like potentially a top 50 deck, though probably not a top 20 deck. Top 20 isn't even like that good. It's definitely not going to be a super competitive deck, I don't think. It could be okay. I don't think it's bad at all. I think if everyone decided to play this deck, it would see results and it would be okay. But it's not great. It's decent though. Single prizers definitely generally struggle, especially when they're a little combo-y. You don't have a lot of versatility, but not a bad card at all. Definitely a decent, interesting one to consider going forwards. And as I said, could end up being even better than like a top 50 deck, somewhere between 50 and 30, or 50 and 21, I guess. But anyways, it's an okay card, not the most interesting in the world either. Then we have Bayet. This card's kind of crazy. We got a shuffle as well, but you have a second attack, but the first one here is the interesting one. Cursed Speech is how the attack name's translated, and for 1 psychic, your opponent shuffles 3 cards from their hand into their deck, and they choose. However, this is obviously supposed to be really good with Xerosic's Machinations, the supporter that says your opponent discards down to 3 cards in hand, and then they discard a bunch of the cards that they don't care for, and then you attack, and those cards the rest are lost into their deck. So then they now have no hand. The reason I don't think this is going to be good is because we saw Salazzle which on the turn that you evolved into it was a stage 1 Pokemon for 2 colorless, so you would need double turbo or potential reversal, which is more difficult to pay than Baynet. I'm gonna admit that, but and it's only on the turn you play it. Ultimately, that's not that much of a downside, but is a little bit of a downside. And then you'd play it, and you could 0-6 Machinations, and then they discard 3 from the hand, so it's even more powerful. This also shuffles their deck, so if you somehow control their top deck through, I guess, like Gothtel, or there might be some other ways. I'm not super familiar with them. These will be coming post rotation as well. So double turbo entry would not work with Salazzle, but certainly that's something you could do now. And that's not something that's seeing any play at all. Like when I say any play at all, I've never seen anyone play it. I'm sure there's someone out there who's trying it out, but ultimately it's like essentially no play. So that's not a good sign. Baynet, I don't think is a completely terrible card. And obviously, if your opponent has just a 3-card hand, you can theoretically kind of catch them off guard. The most interesting thing with Baynet, though, I think, is the fact that it can be paired with Bayet EX. Bayet EX is a card that, and keep in mind this Bayet, which is a good card, will be rotating, so you cannot play them together. But Bayet, or in standard, you can't. In expanded, obviously, things are very different, but let's be honest, who's playing that? But Bayet EX can do item lock for 1 psychic and 30. Ironically, it'll be giving your opponent a bigger hand, which means that Baynet will be worse because like they have all these cards in their hand that aren't going to get played, that might not necessarily have great value. And like if they have 5 nest ball, well, okay, they have 5 ball search cards. You can't have 5 nest balls, but if you have 5 ball search cards, you can get rid of 2 of them. That's no problem. And if your opponent Baynets you, or get rid of 3 of them. It's not necessarily ideal, but it's certainly not that bad. And so Baynet and EX and Baynet have anti-synergy in that manner. But they're both good cards. Baynet's second attack's definitely decent. This card has seen top-level competitive play. It's not like a top deck in the game. It never has been, but it's been decent at times. There was a Baynet Duststorm build that got a lot of hype at a point. It was definitely overhyped. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't that good. And then you also had users have different ways to play it, and it's a solid card. And whenever we've seen a bunch of decent Baynets from time to time, and it's always interesting to see how they can kind of combo together. This Baynet EX works very well with the current standard Baynet, which can recover the supporter, but this one, the EX, could work with this new baby Baynet, which can then be a disruptor if your opponent chooses to play all their items and like go to a small hand, or like just does things a different way. It applies pressure or the threat of pressure in different ways, which is okay. Nothing super interesting, but not a terrible card. Then we have the Dunsparce, and to Dunsparce EX and regular Dunsparce. Regular Dunsparce isn't anything interesting. Obviously, there's the Dunsparce with its ability called, I don't remember the name of the ability. It's called a Runaway Draw. There we go. And once in your turn, you can draw 3, and then if you did, you shuffle this Pokemon, all cards attached to it, into your deck, which means then you can draw it again, which is kind of good, but also kind of bad. I guess it's better than discarding it, but it means that you might end up drawing into it instead of the cards you actually need. But definitely a really interesting engine, one that I don't like. I think it's kind of bad, but ultimately engines like Bibarel and Kirlia are rotating, so the Dunsparce might be what people are looking for if you want to replace them. Is it the same? No, it's not the same as those really at all, but it's an interesting engine, and obviously the Dunsparce and the Dunsparce both all, EX both evolve from Dunsparce. These names are kind of complicated to say, and that might be confusing if you're not paying that much attention when listening to this. But regardless, same Pokemon. One's a baby, or baby as in a single prizer, or and then you got the big Dunsparce, the EX, and you could put them together. They don't. This is not going to be eating up deck slots if you want to play Forte Dunsparce, which you might, probably won't, but if you would, you can still do that. And then you have this attack. You have a wall breaker attack for 3 colors, 150, which hits through any effect. So that's okay, not that good, especially without double turbo. It's pretty underwhelming, but ultimately, if your opponent sticks up Mimikyu in the active, they're playing a deck that's complete stall deck, that they're not applying any pressure, you can manually attach this 3 times and just knock him out. And then you also have adversity tail here for 1 colorless. It does 60 for each of your opponent's Pokemon EX in play. And this is the same, I'm pretty sure, just as for each of your opponent's Pokemon EX. It looks like Zork from Shroud Fable, which does it for EXs and Vs. I can look at it in Japanese to see if it looks the same. I think it does. Obviously, I don't read Japanese. If you don't know that, it looks the same though. So It might be different. I'm not actually 100% sure, but it looks pretty much the same. So I believe it is like the same thing as Zarek, which has not seen any play really. And this one Japanese tournament, someone like won with it. With this like it's a 1/1 line in Serialage deck. So ultimately you can stick kind of whatever in Serialage and it can do something. But ultimately, the Dunpar EX is okay. Obviously, people play EXs right. Yeah, right now there will not be any Vs either. I was going to say. There will be for a short period, but there will not be. This will be on rotation. Oh, and the set in Japan is releasing in January 24th. 24th. Wasn't sure if it was first or fourth. Yeah, 24th. And then Journey Together is the international set releasing in March 28th. Yep. So in 2 months and a bit. Then we have the Dunsparce as a like his high retreat isn't great because the Dunsparce the baby one has I think it's this I don't remember. It doesn't really matter. I think it's 3 retreat, but that one can just switch out. It can go back to the deck. So that could be bad. There are some issues with this card. Its HP is not particularly impressive, so you never want to attack with this as the main attacker. But as a tech option, it's okay. As people might have like 3 excuse me. Oh, not my voice. Okay, there we go. It's they might have like 3 EXs in play. I think that's kind of fair. So could one shot Squawkabilly. Probably not one shotting Pheasant Dip DEX. So just kind of keep that in mind. Might not always one shot Squawkabilly, but decks that play Squawkabilly generally are playing a bunch of EXs. So could be good against like a Raging Bolt, things like that. Then we got this Metagross from Battle Partners. This is it's a card for 2 Psychic. It does 130, but if you have both Beldum and Matang, the Prevo's on the bench, then it does 150 more. So 280, that's like decent. I mean, I guess it would be really good if it was 2 energy, 280, but then you have obviously like a lot of setup here, right? It's a stage 2 and then also stage 1 and a basic. And yes, you're playing all of them. Like you obviously are going to play a bunch of all of them, probably a 4/4/4 line, but still a lot of setup. And it's kind of expensive to pay, not the worst by any means, but a little awkward. So Metagross is a card that's a bit of a meme card. It's not like the worst. We've seen cards like this. We've seen a bunch. I don't really know if any off the top of my head. Maybe Poly, Toad, I think is like that. I don't know if it's the one standard. Yeah, so this one's a really weird card. It's actually very similar to this Polytoad with a Lordy Song Leader. If Poliwag is on, so it does 10 for 2 colorless, and if Poliwag is on your bench, I've never seen anyone play this card either, I don't think. So if Poliwag is on your bench, it does 60 more. If Poliwag is on your bench, it does 90 more. So it'd be the same thing. It's doing noticeably less. It's just doing 160. And then if Poliwrath is on your bench, you're doing 120 more, and then that's 280. So I guess that's like noticeably worse because you need all of those on your bench, but still. And there's like Clinklangs, I think like that. There is this Klinklang, which is just 200 for 3. This card also, I've never seen anyone play this card. It's not in standard. It rotated like a year and a bit ago. Obviously not the best card. We've seen various cards like this, and they're generally bad, and unfortunately Metagross probably will also be bad. You could play it, casually. You can do it, and that's fine, but it's not gonna be. It's probably not gonna set up there. So ultimately, it's fun, but kind of silly. Also, there's a really good Metang in standard that is a metal Metang, but it accelerates metal energy. So probably not good. I mean, it might be the better Metang because it lets you like look at the top of your. I think you look at the top 4 cards of your deck, then put them on the bottom of your deck, and you do shuffle them. But it gives you some deck knowledge. How useful is that deck knowledge? It's probably not useful to almost anyone. Theoretically, if you're like playing at a super high level, you could keep track of your deck and kind of like calculate the odds as you go, and then also it could like I don't know, it could be useful, I guess, to like decide whether or not you want to play cards in certain orders, but that's like crazy and super. That'd be like kind of absurd, and obviously it's not that good. Like let's be honest, if you're playing this Metagross, you're not doing that. So yeah, that's not a thing that really is practical at all. This one can, actually attack some and can do something within the deck. So it's definitely a kind of interesting card, but nothing crazy. Then we have Ruffian, a supporter, which says it's also a trainer here, obviously. I'm looking at this. What is the stuff around the outside? I think it was cropped from somewhere in Japan. So that's what that stuff is. But you choose one of your opponent's Pokemon and discard a tool and special energy from that Pokemon. We see lots of cards like this. This is definitely, I think, one of the weaker iterations. It's kind of like Enhanced Hammer. Discarding the tool is moderately useful. We don't really have tool removal. I mean, we have Lost Vacuum, but that's rotating. There's also Jamming Tower, which is okay. And there's the Ace spec. I think Megaton Blower or something. It's an ace spec that can remove your opponent's tools and special energies and stadiums and your stadiums as well. But ultimately, that's an ace spec. So I think Jamming Tower is better. Well, no, Enhanced Hammer is better than this. Generally, I think the main use is discarding the special energy, and then discarding the tools like kind of useful. And it can discard both from one Pokemon, but that's not that common. I can't really think of when that would happen. I mean, there are times when it could, but it's pretty niche. I think this card is unfortunately quite bad. Or maybe fortunately, I don't know if it would be good if it was good. But regardless, not the most impressive card that we've seen. Definitely a little on the weak side. We got Tyranitar. This Tyranitar is kind of crazy because what it does, it has an attack that's for 2 energy, one of which is darkness, does 150 and mills 2. That's fine. It's nothing amazing. Kind of bad, but not that bad. As we'll see in just a second, with its ability, which says if it's in the active, your opponent's item locked. Obviously, item lock. If you've been paying attention to prismatic evolutions at all, you know that really arguably the only good card in the set is Badoo, and that's an item lock card. It's good. I think it's definitely, or it was overrated. I don't know if it still is overrated, but it was extremely overrated at one point. But still the best card in the set, a meta impactful card, a very good card, and it just item locks and it's really good, but it doesn't really do damage. This item locks and does damage, like actual good damage. Bayet EX and Venomoth, they've both been played. I was talking about Bayet EX earlier. That item locks. It was played some with Dusknoir's, I guess the most damaging build, which could knock itself out and do damage. Though even like 130 plus 30 is just 160, and this just does 150. So you don't need to knock yourself out. It is more expensive, but if you're buying lots of turns, then it doesn't really matter how expensive it is. And that's only 2. It's not like that bad. Same thing as Metagross, except you don't need a bunch of stage 2s on your, or a bunch of Pokemon on your bench, and also it is a little easier to pay. But then also, well, it's ignoring the specific type, it's easier. There are ways to accelerate Psychic. Darkness, I don't think there is. There's Dark Patch, but that's rotating. So regardless, Tyranitar is definitely a card that can buy a lot of time. Well, talking about Badoo, your opponent can't get out of it though. So Tyranitar, they can get out of through Boss. They can't get out through Prime Catcher or Pokemon Catcher or Counter Catcher because they're items, which they can't play. But they could get out through Boss or Rhyme. I get no one plays Rhyme. I think Rhyme's underrated, but it's like it forces a switch. It's like Iron Bundle, which you can do Iron Bundle. Can't search for it with Arvin or Nest Ball. Well, Arvin obviously gets an item and a tool. Force Steel Stone's rotating though, but anyways, they can't really get it as I can't talk in as many ways. But Tyranitar is definitely a card that is a solid card. I think this is a decent card that can really mess up your opponent a lot. I'd say similar things that I said about Lycanroc. It's like 31 through, or no, 21 through 50 is kind of where it could be. It might not even necessarily be in there, but I think it could definitely be in there. It's a pretty disruptive card. It could even be better than that if people decide to pursue it, because generally, if you don't know, the decks that are good, obviously, generally it's like the best possible combination of cards is what the best decks are, but that's not exactly true. The Pokemon community is a decent size, but if more people were in the community, the decks could become even stronger. The decks aren't perfect the way they are now. The top players haven't necessarily optimized the decks 100%, and there are decks and card combinations that haven't really been tried at all. That's why sometimes halfway through a format, stuff just gets changed up from seemingly nowhere because someone like tried out a new combo and it was really good. And that applies for just random single prices. People are naturally gravitated to the cards that seem the strongest. Tyranitar seems decent, but ultimately, if everyone decided to work on Tyranitar, it would get developed more and then would potentially be better than a deck that's developed less, right? Developed less. But regardless, Tyranitar is not like insane or bad. It's decent. I think it's a strong card, kind of annoying, but it's definitely decent. And we'll see what it looks like. It can be played with Badoo to have a like steady item lock throughout the first turn and then into the turns where Tyranitar is active as well. Then we have a bunch of cards. These were revealed actually when I was recording my other video, and so I saw these and was like, okay, I gotta talk about these. And first of all, I want to talk about this Wailord art, or in the Wailmer. The Wailmer is super spherical. It's just like kind of weird, I feel like. And then the Wailord looks so big. Normally I don't comment on arts, but this looks like so. Obviously, Wailord's a very big Pokemon, but I feel like they really convey that with a card, which I really liked. Again, I almost never talk about these arts, but I felt like talking about it here. And we'll talk about the cards. Wailmer obviously has high HP, but nothing super interesting to say about it. Then we got Wailord, which has 240 HP. That's insane. I don't know the highest HP stage 1 in the game. I don't know if I can find that. Um, let's see, stage one single prizer, because obviously multi-prize stage 1s have more HP. The highest HP stage 1 in the game is, I think, Palafin at 340, then Blissey at 300. VMAXs and V-Stars are similar to stage 1s. They are not stage 1s, which matters for a handful of cards like, say, Hyper Aroma, but ultimately they are similar and they have like 300s, low to mid 300 range HPs. But anyways, we got these. We got format standard. There's a way to search not EXs, but I don't know how to do that. So anyways, can I sort by HP? No. So oh, I can say greater than or equal to 240. There we go. Limitless has a really cool database, which I use a lot, and I do use it in my videos. So just wanted to shout that out, I guess. But these are all EXs. How do I do not EXs? I don't remember. I think it's like that didn't. Okay, maybe that works. So if I say greater than or equal to like 40, yeah. So this is the highest HP single prizer. I'll say greater than or equal to 200. And oh, so there's some Wailords of Blissey and Cabaraja. So obviously Wailord also has high HP traditionally. This is like absurdly high for a single prizer. I wonder if there are any cards in standard more than 240 or the like stage 2s. Is oh, I forgot there's V's as well. Garganackle. I think this card is miscategorized. So yeah, anyways, it looks like this is the highest HP single prizer. Not 100% sure on that if I use the database right, but ultimately this is like obviously really high. Ultimately, the point of HP is to not get one-shotted, and if you're getting one-shotted or knocked out, it doesn't really matter how many prizes you, or if you're not getting one-shotted or knocked out, it doesn't matter how many prizes you give up. So Blood Mirror Saluna EX is still a better Pokemon to like loop using Penny, but just wanted to kind of point that out as a big stalling Pokemon where you can just take damage and take maybe get like two-shotter or something and be a very stally deck. There was a deck called, I think it was Steelix. I'm not super familiar with this deck, like at all. I don't really know. There's a deck called Wall Stall, which is like this deck and Limitless is super complicated. I don't know if it's complicated. It's not really. It's just a bunch of different decks kind of lumped into one. You could personally, I consider any wall deck to be a stall deck, and vice versa. That's how I um, like kind of define stall. Some people say a deck like Snorlax is stall. I haven't really heard a reason why some people call Snorlax stall. People say it's like, oh, it's stall because it like slows the game down. But then like control people, I'd say controls the decks or disruption or control, which is I'd group together as decks that slow the game down through disrupting your opponent's resources. Regardless, stall is the idea of like in this case, having lots of HP and tanking hits. There are also walls like Mimikyu, which I mentioned earlier is another wall, but Wailord could be a wall, but there's Steelix. Steelix Prime, I don't think it's the same deck. So yeah, Wall Stall is the same as Steelix. This deck was a stage 1. Again, I'm not really familiar with this deck, but this could be, I could play it. Here we go. Is this standard or is this expanded? It's standard. You had Steelix, which had 190 HP, which is less. You had Metal Frying Pan to take less damage. And you have a bunch of different things going on in this deck, but ultimately you have the Steelix, which is able to tank hits. Ultimately, the power level was lower at this time, I think. I mean, it was somewhat. Yeah, I was like, when is this? Yeah, so the power level was lower. It kind of ramped up with tag teams, but ultimately Wailord could tank hits, but isn't necessarily tank hits all that often. How would you loop this? What terror scenario, I guess, is what you do. It has an attack as well, which does for, oh, I thought it was 40 times. It does 10, 50 more for each water energy attached to it. You could pair this with Champao. It's actually stronger than Champao EX. I mean, no, in damage, it's not stronger than Champao, but in terms of HP, it's more than Champao EX. You could even use this with Heavy Baton to move the energy around. That's not like that useful. Superior energy retrieval is almost definitely better, but still, Wailord is like so big. It's an interesting card. Is it a cool card? I don't know. Is it realistically a good stall card? Probably not, but it is an interesting card to consider. Oh, we have Ed's Proline. I don't know what to say about this card. It's not really good at all. Hopefully we see an Ed's Lipard. I mean, Ed's honestly, I wasn't necessarily expecting it to get more cards. I was like kind of expecting to maybe get one or two more, which I guess is what we're getting. But ultimately, Ends is there's some like hop stuff as well, which I was definitely not expecting to get new cards. We have and we have an End support card as well. But then we have Magm and Magmortar. We'll get to the trainers Pokemon in just a minute. But Magmortar here has its attack, or its ability, its attack's pretty generic, but its ability says put 3 more damage counters on opponent's burned Pokemon. Burn is kind of like poison, and in some ways you could argue it's very functionally similar within actual like gameplay, specifically at higher levels. And if you're pushing towards one shots, it's essentially the same, except better because you put 2 damage counters during Pokemon checkup, but now you do 3 more, so it's 5 or 8, and then you flip a coin after you take the damage. And if it's tails, you are still burned, but if it's heads, you are not burned anymore, just like how sleep would work. But anyways, you got Magmortar, and you have this new Volcanion EX, which says once during a turn, if it's in the active, you may make your opponent's active burned. There's actually a deck that is a bit of an infamous deck called Donk. It's probably my least favorite deck of all time. In terms of game design, I actually recently talked about Misty being the worst designed card of all time, which I don't know if it actually is, and some weird stuff but with Misty. I mean, I went over it in its own video, but ultimately it is a card that was annoying, but just one card, and it's not really its own deck, and the deck's whatever to play against. Donk is probably the worst deck ever to play against, where you go first and then you knock out your opponent's only Pokemon to play and then you win. Ultimately, it's a deck that is kind of it's like very toxic because your opponent literally never gets to play at all, because the way it worked was, and I was just thinking about this the other day, thinking about PCGO, which despite all the things that did good, which were a few, this was not one of them, where people play Donk, and either the Donk player would go first, and there's 3 things that could happen. The Donk player goes first, they knock out your only Pokemon or all your Pokemon and just win, and that's it. You obviously don't play and you lose. Either that they could go first, knock out or like miss or knock out just one Pokemon and then quit, and then you win, but you didn't play the game at all either. And then the third thing is that you go first, the Donk player goes second, the Donk player quits, and because they can't win going second, and then you also don't get to play the game. You win, but you still don't get to play the game literally at all. So in any case, you never get to play. And Donk is something that's like turn one going first damage, and this is a way that you can get it turn one first damage, because if it's in the active, it burns, which is 20 damage. You can't do the extra damage from Magmortar, as far as I'm aware. I can't think of any way in standard. There is a some cards in expanded that can do it, but ultimately Magmortar it's a cool card. I talked about some custom cards involving burn, which I think are cool. And then Volcanion EX here, though, is a basic, so it can do damage. Also, it's like an attacker. It's nothing super special. 160, movement energy, 20 your bench Pokemon. But and also it's high retreat. You need to switch it in and out. Maybe using Pekkaron and EX and Baby Pekkaron. The idea would be you get Proop on it. You'd use Iron Valiant too. So you play a bunch of Switch. You'd have Iron Valiant EXs. In a Volcanion, you'd have Pekron EX. You don't necessarily need Pekron EX. So you have Baby Pekron, which is 5 extra damage. You have Brute Bonnet with a tool, which is 6. You need that to actually get the damage for Pekron. Radiant History instances the Will of Rotated. So, but you have the Stadium, so that's 8 damage that you're doing, all to the active, keep in mind. Then Volcanion EX is going to be another 2, so that's 10 damage. You could do Hyper Laser, but or Dangerous Laser, but this is, I think, better. Using a period spec seems kind of sketchy, and ultimately it's like a mediocre card. And then, so that's 10, and you can add some extra with Iron Valiant EX, or maybe just like not. I don't know. Ultimately, it's not a good strategy, but it might be something you could play, and is noticeably better with this. Although it's a little weird, because ultimately, if you're playing Iron Valiant EX, you swing it into the active, then at that point, you you're doing the 20 damage anyways, which is the same as Volcanion EX. So it only is different if you start Volcanion EX, or it also does allow you to technically do more damage if you play 4 Iron Valiant EXs and the Volcanion EX. That's an extra 10 damage counters, or 100 damage, which is kind of weird, because you probably aren't, like, you're not doing that much. You're not doing enough to one-shot a V, I don't think, or like an EX. I guess you can't one-shot a V because it'll all be gone. So that's I don't remember exactly how much damage I said it was, but like 180 theoretically. But you also need an insane bench. I don't think that's possible because you need areas you're under depths, and then you can't have a dangerous jungle, regardless, or perilous jungle. I don't remember the name of the stadium. It's no one really plays it. I don't think. I actually want to check perilous jungle. It's been played in Cloth though. I was wondering about that because like Cloth is play. It's been played some in that deck, not a ton, but a little bit. Regardless, Volcanion EX is I think a fine card. It's kind of fun to see burn, get some new stuff, which I, as I said, saw in some custom card video, which is really fun. Then we got, as I said, Edge Line. It's like kind of nothing, but it's a card. Magm is actually a really interesting card. This card seems this might be my favorite card of all these reveals. Its ability also does like an attack that's it's not great, but usable in like some casual formats. Then Magirna with auto heal, as long as it's your active, whenever you attach an energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon, heal 90 from that Pokemon. This means if you have an ability like Bax Caliber, you can attach a bunch of energy and then heal off all the damage. Ultimately, that's kind of weird, obviously expensive in terms of you need to be using all these resources to do this, but ultimately it's something that does heal a ton. I guess you could do this with the Wailord, right? You have Wailord, you have maybe that's the intended combo, Bax Caliber, Wailord, Magearna. That seems unlikely, but it could be. You accelerate a bunch of energies to Wailord, or you like leave it in the active, it gets hit, then you retreat it, or you switch it, and then you, I guess, switch it to Ab, or you need some like pivot that's not. Oh no, you could switch it into a free retreater as well, because you need to play switch to get Wailord out of the active, and then you attach a bunch of energies to it, you heal off all the damage, and then you send it back up, and then you keep doing that, and just like sending it back, sending it to the bench, healing it all up, and then sending it to the active, and doing more damage each time. That's like kind of cool. Probably really terrible, but it's kind of funny. Um, Probably, as I said, probably won't work, but funny. Then we got Hops Corviknight. This isn't great. It does 50 to the active, 50 to one of your opponent's benched. It does one colorless, so with the tool, it's free. And the type that you want to be playing with Hops is probably Metal, because that's the type of Hops Zacian EX. All the others are colorless. Including that's the type that's associated with the Hop deck. And then for 3, you do 150, 2 metal, and a colorless. Next turn, it takes 60 less damage from attacks. This is okay, but you only have 170 HP, so it's pretty mediocre. I don't think this card is particularly good, unfortunately. Hops of Rookity is very generic. Theoretically, could be buffed to an actually decent card, but I would not do that. Hops of Rookity, you could do. Actually, let's see. With the Stadiums, 30 more. The Snorlax is another 30 more, and then the tool is another 30 more, so that's 90 more. That's 110 for just one energy. That's actually not bad. Obviously, a bunch of stuff, but it could work, and it's an interesting card. Then we got Hops Corviknight, which is like it's it's an evolution. We got Super Potion. It's back, heal 60 from one of your Pokemon if you do discard an energy from that Pokemon. Notably, you don't need any energy to actually discard this, unlike Hyper Potion where you do need the energy. So, kind of interesting. Super Potion, definitely card to watch out for. How good is it? It's okay, but it's kind of interesting. Then we have Hops Bag. Hops Bag is an item. Search for 2 basic Hops Pokemon and put them onto your bench, then shuffle your deck. This is really interesting because like Buddy Buddy Poffin, but it can get these Pokemon like the Snorlax and the Hops Cramorant, the Hopsashi EX. So this seems like a really strong card, obviously, for Hops. I said it was really interesting. I wonder exactly how good it'll be. I think it'll be pretty good though. And Hops is definitely it's the deck of the 4 that, or the trainer of the 4 that's gotten the most Pokemon or most cards so far, and it's really good. I think it's going to be a top 10 deck when it comes out at least, and it's one of the best decks we've seen as it's a solo new deck in years from a new set. Not years, in like a year, because Trapghost was the best deck. I think that was brand new last year. Ceruleans was okay. Trapghost ultimately also wasn't so like contained to that set because Dust was an important part of it, which was a different set. Unlike something like Charizard Pidgeot, which was really strong from just one set. Anyways, Hops Bag is a good card. We have Iris' Fighting Spear. Iris presumably not getting cards. We also saw like a Brock's card. Brock's probably not getting cards. Or Brock is probably not getting cards. But then you have the supporter, which is discard a card from your hand, then draw it till you have 6. This is like super generic. Um, yeah, I really don't know what to say about this card. It's not like particularly good. It's not completely terrible. It's certainly all right. If you want to play this, like I guess you could. It's like a tier 3 supporter, I'd say, which is like I talk about tier 2 supporters, which are decent and somewhat playable, though don't see that much play. This is like tier 4 is like no one's ever going to play this, unfortunately, but it's a card. Then we have End's Castle, which is a stadium, which says each End's Pokemon in play both yours and your opponent's has no retreat. I think someone pointed this out in a comment on the PokeBeach article, but there's now a tool, a stadium, and one of the things, maybe it was hops, I don't know. There was like a tool, a stadium, a trainer, and a supporter. Maybe not a supporter, but in the one of the trainers decks, or maybe multiple of them. I don't think N has a tool, but I could be forgetting it. Regardless, there's a bunch of things and an item. Wait, what's the switch out? Yeah, no, one of each. An item, a supporter, a tool, and a stadium. So you can do it with hops. There's the stadium called, I don't remember what it's called, but it's like a town or something, and it increases damage. You got, obviously, this hops bag card, and you have hops choice band. I think it's choice band. I don't remember. But the one that you do 30 more. So you got a bunch of different options here. Hops is looking even better. This Ends Castle card is okay. It's not insane. Obviously, having no retreat is nice, but you're not necessarily looking for this type of utility within the Ends deck. Again, it's a nice addition. You probably pop in a copy or two. It's, again, decent, but how good is it? It's not something that's going to really take it to the next level. I don't think. Certainly, I think the Darman and Sarmanton's got to have a decent retreat cost, but um, it's not, this isn't the card that I'm thinking is amazing, but again, you'd rather have it than not. But ultimately, we got some really solid new card reveals. Battle Partners looks like a really solid set so far. I've heard some people say they think it's a little disappointing. I think it's pretty solid. I don't think it's amazing, but like I don't think it's an all-time great set or anything like that. But I think it's one of the better sets we've seen recently. It kind of depends how you rank the sets. Like the past 3 sets, including the mini set, not Prismatic Evolution. Prismatic Evolution is really bad, but Shrouded Fable was a really good mini set. But it was a mini set, so it didn't have a lot of cards. Then unlike Prismatic Evolutions, which has a lot of cards, but they're all really bad. And then you had Stellar Crown, which had obviously some really good stuff, some really like generic, or like someone said they didn't like it because or someone said it was bad because in a comment I got, which was because it had, because it was mostly trainers, but like the good cards were mostly trainers, but the trainers were really strong. I personally say that makes it very good. Obviously, just depends how you value stuff. And the trainers aren't like all-time broken or even like best cards in the game right now, but they're certainly strong trainers. And support Pokemon, and obviously Trapos is a good card, but also pretty generic. And then Surging Sparks had a ton of good cards that were like decent, not at the level of like Everzero Underdepths or Noctowl or Trapos EX or Glass Trumpet. I think is really good, but it's not played that much. But cards like that are like really good, versatile cards. But there was a bunch of solid attackers and really interesting cards. So a big variety of like just different types of sets in those past 3. And Battle Partners is going to be a really different set. I think it's different from those, but back to like a kind of normal set, which is going to be a bunch of really good, like good focus decks and a bunch of good cards as well. So really looking forward to this. But tell me down below in the comments which of these cards you're most excited for, and remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell, all that good stuff. And as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.